Les, do you want to monitor the weight room?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Les, are you able to see the screen?
Yes, I
Yes.
am.
Okay, awesome. So, hi, welcome everybody. My name is Rachel and I work for Respite Association of Wisconsin and my colleague Leslie. I'll let you
Sorry.
introduce.
Hi, I'm Leslie. I work with Respite Association as well.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. So today we are going to discuss respite grants for family caregivers in Wisconsin. If you are a professional or if you are a family caregiver, and we find oftentimes professionals are also working family caregivers, you've come to the right spot. What we're going to do is talk about three grants for family caregivers. Two, the Caregiver Respite Grant and the Supplemental Respite Grant have been around for a while, and we're excited to launch today. It's Healthy Meals and Healthy Minds for family caregivers. So let's get into it. First, while we have an audience, I also want to highlight other things that RCAW does, even though today's webinar we're focusing on our grants specifically for family caregivers. We also have training for family caregivers. Everything's free. There's no charge for anything. Training for respite care providers. We have funding available for new or existing respite care programs. And we also have a registry that family caregivers can use and respite care providers can create a profile on. So it's a bridge to connect people who need respite care to those who provide respite care. Okay, so any family caregiver on the call, one of the most important things to do is, and for professionals, is a lot of times people don't identify as family caregivers. So I always say, or we always say at our CAW, the first step is identifying that you are a family caregiver. The second step is knowing what respite is and not feeling guilty taking a break. I'm Leslie and I aren't the presenters that read word for word verbatim what's on the screen. So, but as you can see on the screen, what happens to caregivers, the stress of the 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, duty of caring for a loved one, regardless of their age or their disability, is it essentially impacts your physical health and your emotional health tremendously. And that's why it's so important to not feel guilty to take the break so you can continue doing what you do. There are, I mean, this specific slide could be hundreds of slides highlighting the benefits of respite care, but what we're really trying to reiterate, especially to those who are family caregivers, is it's okay to take a break. You need to take breaks and you need to take care of yourself. And that's where we come in to help you do that. The first grant is the Caregiver Respite Grant Program. And Leslie, I am happy to take over the waiting room and advance slides for you, but I know you were going to discuss this grant.
Absolutely. So the Caregiver Respite Grant Program is designed for direct respite care. This means that you can receive up to 5 days of financial support to choose the provider of your choice to provide 5 days of respite care for you in a 30-day period. And there's a lot of numbers in here, so I always like to slow it down, but the high level overview is 5 days in a 30-day period, and you can reapply every 60 days right now. So the 5 days, that 30-day timer starts from the time you submit your application. And we'll get a little deeper into that in a moment, but this grant is designed to have 5 days of respite care.
Leslie, I have a question because it's such a frequently asked question.
Yeah.
So this grant is for caregivers caring for a loved one on the lifespan. So it's parents caring for children living with intellectual or developmental disabilities. It's family caring for other family members. It's adults caring for their adult children. Tell me, like, what do different types of caregivers look like?
Oh boy, caregivers look very different. So it could be me caring for my child who has extreme autism or anxiety or behavioral disabilities. It could be me caring for my spouse who has dementia. It could be me caring for my loved one, even from a couple of counties away. I have to go and visit my mom to make sure that she can get in and out of her house, or to make sure she's taking her medications. Or maybe I just make a call to my neighbor to make sure I'm checking in on them. Caregiving can look very different. And as Rachel mentioned before, respite is a break for a primary caregiver. So that means these funds have to go, we're going to pay the primary caregiver. I'll get into that a little more, but it is for a break. So we can't pay the primary caregiver to continue the care. Respite is going to be a break for that person. So that provider must not live with the care recipient or the primary caregiver. Great
And
question.
yeah, can applicants, can they hire whoever they want? Or
They
I'm just
can.
highlighting always or frequently asked questions. So
Absolutely. I
can
love to
family
get that.
caregivers hire?
Yeah, they can hire the person of their choosing. As long as like I said, that person doesn't live with them. So if I have a family, friend, neighbor, anything like that, you can hire someone like that. You could also look into agencies if that's something that you're interested in. We have the Wisconsin Respite Care Registry. If you don't have a lot of natural supports or agencies in your area, you can check that out to see if there's any providers on there that you're interested in seeking. So this is designed to be self-directed. So we are entrusting in the caregiver that they know their care recipient best and who would be able to best provide that respite care. So the
Awesome.
eligibility, oh, go ahead, Rachel, sorry.
I just said awesome. I did
Oh,
not interrupt.
the eligibility criteria, in order to be eligible for our grant programs, we are funding of last resort. So the care recipient or the primary caregiver has to have looked into something, some other funding. All of our grants are made as a safety net for primary caregivers. We want to make sure that we're connecting you with long-term solutions if that's possible, and making sure that you get the support that you deserve. So in order to be eligible for our grant programs, I'm just going to run through these eligibility criteria numbers here real quick. But that first one is not expecting to receive services or is on a wait list. So if you go to any sort of funding service, whether that's children in the CLTS waiver, children's long-term service, or supports, I'm sorry, whether it's AFCSP, NFCSP, which would be the older adult side, which is Alzheimer's Family Caregiver, National Family Caregiver, depending on IRIS or all of these different MCOs that if you are on a wait list, that would be number one. You would be eligible for our programs in that eligibility criteria. If you've been denied, so for any reason, whether that's functional or financial, if you've been denied for those programs, you would be eligible for us under that number two. Number three is you have exhausted those fundings. So if you received funding, and all counties do things very different in the state of Wisconsin, so it depends how it's allocated. But if you have, let's say, funding for the year and you have exhausted that funding, then you would be eligible for our funding as well. Or if you have it for a month, depending on how that cycle looks. Number four in there is if you need flexibility. So if the applicant needs flexibility for services not covered, in that new program we're going to roll out today here in a little while, is more than likely going to be where we're going to fall, is that those programs are not necessarily designed for these financial supports. So if you're in the CLTS, sometimes depending on the county, they don't pay for housekeeping. Sometimes they don't, you have to have, excuse me, you have to have a certain provider. So you need flexibility there. So if the applicant needs flexibility in their services, that would be number four. And number five, if they're ineligible, once again, that would be fall very, very closely related to the denied. It's just you wouldn't have to go through the process to officially be denied. We just know that you're ineligible because of assets or functionality or whatever the case is. So that is in order to be eligible for our grant programs. Rachel, if you could scroll to the next slide.
Absolutely.
The application process, our applications and how all of this is done is all done online. Sometimes that can be a deterrent for family caregivers. However, I am very encouraging as far as if you need help, if someone needs help, we are more than willing to connect them to the right people, to offer different resources, and if worst comes to worst, to walk them through it. I do know that majority of libraries in the state of Wisconsin are very helpful when it comes to technology. So if it's a technology issue, if it's an email issue, just comfortability with a computer, libraries are a great resource. If it is just, I'm having issues with how this all works, we are more than happy to help you walk through that process. So the first thing that happens is the applicant is going to complete an eligibility criteria form. It's a very short form that's just saying, yes, I'm a primary caregiver. Yes, I live in the state of Wisconsin. And yes, I've tried something else and it just doesn't work. And that's designed just to get you in our system and to get you the information to make sure that we're keeping this process moving. The next form that's needed is a supporting documentation form. That can come from the ADRC if you're working with the ADRC. That can come from a case manager if you're working with a case manager through funding. So it would depend on where the funding source is, but whoever is allocating those funds or distributing those funds, that would be the person that's going to complete that supporting documentation form. That cannot be completed by the applicant. After we have both of those forms, we send you an email with the link to the application. In the application, you're going to tell us who's going to provide that service for you. You're going to tell us what the hourly rates are, the hours of service, the totals, all of that important data for us. And then we will reach out if there is any concern with any of the information you've given us. The most commonly asked question here is, what is the appropriate rate of pay, right? So if I'm using my neighbor who is not through an agency or someone who has hourly rates that are already established, what is a good number? We are seeing anywhere between $12 and $25 an hour right now for individuals. So depending on level of care, if it's companion care, obviously we're on the lower end. If this is care that is, ADLs or things like that, helping with meals, helping with toileting, different things like that, then we're on, depending on the levels, that would depend on your rate of pay. As long as they fall within market rates, there usually is not a concern. When it comes to agencies, those rates are already set, so typically they are not disputed. After we have gone through your application, we will send you an email if you've been approved. And in the email, it will include all of the next steps. So all of the things we should be remembering, all of the things you'll need, the link to the grant report. And the grant report is how that money is going to be sent out. So after those 5 dates of respite, then you will complete the grant report. In the grant report, you will tell us, in fact, this did happen, it didn't happen, it changed a little bit, or we had less service, whatever the case is, and you will submit that to us. We will then pay you as the primary caregiver, and you can then in turn pay your respite provider. If you use an agency, there is the opportunity for us to pay the agency directly. However, the agency needs to be comfortable being paid after the respite has been rendered, which can sometimes be a little bit bumpy. However, we're happy to talk with those agencies. We're happy to give them information up front and all of those kinds of things. And then they would then, if you're working for an agency, they would complete a separate grant report. And the grant report would be submitted to us and we could pay them directly. Once we have the grant report and the payment is out, we then request that you complete a survey for us. That is required in order to reapply. That is how we continue to make sure that we're serving family caregivers through data collection. Okay, so if all of my mumbo jumbo is not your thing, we have a couple of different options. We have a document that is how to apply. It goes through every single step. It has links. It's beautifully laid out, and it makes things very clear if you're a visual learner. The other option is the step-by-step video. It's a short video. It has a much nicer voice than I do and very cute infographics. And it can, walk through how the program works, how it's designed, and get you a better understanding of how to apply. This is just some data from a previous grant year. The most important thing to me is that bottom line down there where it says, did RCAW grant funds positively impact your emotional wellness? And 100% of impact surveys said yes. That to me says how important these grants are to family caregivers.
This slide is a live preview of the supporting documentation form. As I mentioned previously, when the webinar started, and we're still trying to figure out the glitch on my individuals, didn't get a confirmation email with the link to join. So this link does need to be updated because we have it's the same information on the supporting documentation form. It's just in a different format. But when I send this, so I'm going to send the presentation to anyone who registered for today, and we're also going to have it posted on our website. But before I do so, as soon as I went to this slide, I was like, oh, this link needs to be updated from the old to the new so everyone has the right form. This slide, Leslie, I don't want to step on your toes, but I think when I asked I know when I asked a frequently asked question earlier, you already have answered this about the hourly rate, and really just highlighted how the Caregiver Respite Grant Program, or the CRGP, it's acronym soup in this industry. So how it highlights self-direction, and it allows for flexible respite care in that family caregivers can hire who they want. And I just want to reiterate, RCAW, we have no preference on who provides the respite care for family caregivers, as long as they are getting the break that they need. Talking about the breaks that they need and not being, and I say this from a non-judgmental place, but not being proactive and taking those breaks and getting respite care when you can. What happens is emergencies can happen. We have worked with family caregivers where they are in a mental health crisis from the stress of family caregiving, and that is absolutely an emergency use of this grant program. The other bullet points list other things that constitute for our emergency use of the Caregiver Respite Grant Program. The difference is if a family caregiver needs emergency use of these funds, the supporting documentation form from the Aging and Disability Resource Center, so the ADRC, or the county, we skip that step and get the funding in place to family caregivers who are having a medical emergency, a mental health emergency, and as you can see down here with these bullets, that is what constitutes as emergency respite for this grant program. We do reserve the right, and we at times do request some additional documentation, meaning we've had family caregivers come to RCAW, whether it's email, phone, in person, and they need emergency use because, I'm just going to scroll right back up here, they need medical attention in the immediate future. We do need to be good stewards of our funding and ask questions. So if a caregiver comes to us and says, which has happened, I hurt my back transferring my loved one, and I was walking funny, and I fell, and now I blew my knee out and I need knee surgery, and it's scheduled in 3 days. We'll just ask the family caregiver or the doctor or whomever just to get us some sort of something in print that does verify that there is a need. Same thing with there's been loss of employment, and Leslie has asked for other supporting documentation from caregivers. If there's a mental health crisis happening, we've gotten documentation from therapists or hospitals that the family caregiver was seen for that. So just once again, I want to talk about us trusting family caregivers, but also being good stewards of the state and federal dollars that we do administer. Before we go to the next grant program, I want to give the opportunity, I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Are there any questions or anything in the chat? Laura said, I agree, that's when you need support. Burnout is real. Okay, great. So there's comments in the chat, and we welcome those throughout the webinar, but I just wanted to verify that there weren't any questions. Feel free to unmute yourself. Leslie and I are pretty laid back, so if anyone has a question, you can unmute and ask. You can pop it in the chat. Okay, so I am going to talk about the Supplemental Respite Grant Program. Let's see, Kelly, we're going to admit her and then we'll get started. All right, so the Supplemental Respite Grant Program, what this does is, going back a step, so the application process for this is very similar to the Caregiver Respite Grant Program with an eligibility criteria form. and a supporting documentation form from a professional, whether it's at the Aging and Disability Resource Center or whatever professionals you're working at a governmental agency is who submits the supporting documentation form. So it's the same for this grant, but what it is it provides $250 for supplemental services. And while funding is available, caregivers can reapply every 60 days. When we say supplemental services, well, first let me back up. This grant was born, I'm not quite sure of the word I want to use, but the why behind the Supplemental Respite Grant Program is a few years back, professionals would approach RCAW and say, I'm working with the caregiver. At this time, the break they need is help keeping up with snow removal or cutting the lawn care, or helping transport the care recipient to respite or medical appointments. And that was not an allowable expense for the Caregiver Respite Grant Program. And when we tracked all of the inquiries and then kind of saw the trend that various counties, I'm not sure if we mentioned, but now is a good time. We serve all 72 counties in Wisconsin and 11 of the federally recognized tribes. But we found a trend of professionals or caregivers saying, can I hire someone to help with laundry or meal preparation, etc. That's when we internally saw a need for the Supplemental Respite Grant Program. So that's the why behind this. But as you can see, all of these right here, all of these bullets are an allowable expense for the Supplemental Respite Grant Program. And we always say respite is in the eyes of the beholder. Of course, we want caregivers to have someone spend, meaningful time and engage with the care recipient doing creative things. That, of course, is always the break that we want family caregivers to have, but we're not in their shoes. And maybe a break is having someone come in and help with house cleaning or laundry, any of these activities, having a sensory items for the care recipient. We had a family who used the funds to install a sensory swing, because that is really what helped their child with stims give them a break. The child would use the sensory swing in the home, and it created peace for that family for a short while. And that's truly what respite care is. We do include, so this slide will look familiar to the slide that we previously spoke on, but we want, when we publish our presentations, we want it to be as easy as can be for caregivers to follow the application processes. So the same thing, it's the eligibility criteria form that the family caregiver fills out. The supporting documentation form comes from a staff member at a governmental agency, just verifying that they're eligible for this grant, meaning they're on a wait list, they've exhausted funds. A lot of times, I will say, the Supplemental Respite Grant Program is an allowable expense, because a lot of times other long-term care waivers or supports don't allow these for an allowable expense within that program. So that's when I believe it's like the fourth eligibility criteria bullet point talks about they're receiving supports, but they need flexibility outside of those supports to utilize services that RCAW's grants cover. We do ask, we do ask, but we hope that caregivers utilize, there's a grant report to track expenses, and there's more information on the website on the grant report. And we do every quarter audit caregivers and ask them to turn in their grant reports. Let's just say they hired a company to come in and cut their lawn. Keep that invoice and track it on the grant report. Backing up, same thing with the Caregiver Respite Grant Program. RCAW, we have no preference on who provides any of these services. So we do have caregivers who utilize a company to help with transportation or snow removal, et cetera, et cetera. But we also have caregivers that have neighbors that are willing to help, but the caregivers are shy and feel guilty asking for that help because they want to be able to pay them. So anybody can provide these services, and the grant report walks you through if you hired a company or if you asked a friend, a neighbor, anybody to help provide the service. Same for this grant as the Caregiver Respite Grant. On the website, we have a document that you can walk through with the steps, step 1 through step 5, and these are hyperlinks, so you can click right on here to get to the eligibility criteria form, the supporting documentation form, the grant report. Like I said, or like rather Leslie said, all of this is on the website, but we know that people learn differently, and sometimes someone wants it in writing and they want the links, and sometimes people want to watch a video. So whatever is best for you. Some family caregivers do both, but we just want to make these grants easy to apply for eligible caregivers and not so cumbersome and filled with red tape. Okay, so if you're on this webinar, once again, apologize for technical difficulties, but you are first to hear about a new grant that we are launching called Healthy Meals and Healthy Minds. I do want to make everyone aware, and I will put this link in the chat, but there is a national strategy to support family caregivers, and RCAW was one of 4 states in the US to receive funding to help implement the 5 goals from the national strategy to support family caregivers. And without, Les, would you mind putting the link in the chat? Because I always want to,
Absolutely.
Thank you. I want to make some family caregivers and some professionals don't know about this, but there is a national strategy at the federal level to support family caregivers, and the grant that was administered by the Administration of Community Living required states who applied to address at least 3 of the 5 goals, and Wisconsin is one of the states who received it, and we are addressing 4 of the goals. And that long-winded explanation is goal 3 of the national strategy to support family caregivers is to strengthen services and supports. And that is exactly what Healthy Meals and Healthy Minds does. Is it allows family caregivers to get $250. They can reapply every 60 days. And I'm just gonna, I think this will be helpful. That they can get $250 every 60 days. They can reapply. And I want to give a shout out to where it's due. This was replicated. The state of Montana did this. Nutritious Meals is Respite. So what it allows family caregivers to do is there's meal kits. Some meals come with the exact ingredients you need, so you can just toss together. I don't want to say just, because you're very stressed. You've probably worked a full day, and you've got all these demanding things that you need to get to. But this provides fresh meals for family caregivers and their families, whether they choose to get the kit and prepare it themselves, or whether some of these services send you the meal and you heat it up and eat it. But this is absolutely strengthening services and supports. And one of the bullet points underneath goal 3 was access to nutritious meals. So that's how we got to this for Healthy Meals, Healthy Minds. So this is going off the national strategy. And another one was under goal 3 is access to education, counseling, and peer support. So that's where we came up with mental health and wellness. Family caregivers can use the funding to help offset costs for therapy, to address any mental health, anxiety, depression, which we know runs rampant, not only across our country, but especially in the family caregiver population. Wellness classes such as yoga, meditation, gym or community memberships, books, weighted blankets, light therapy, virtual subscriptions. It's the same thing for this grant program. We ask that you track expenses on the grant report. And I do want to say that as professionals, we came up with what we thought would be under the mental health and wellness umbrella. But if there's a caregiver that wants to utilize these funds for, let's say, something we haven't thought of, email us, ask for permission, ask us if that's okay, then we can save it in the file and approve that. So like I said, anything that can support their mental health and wellness holistically and in a healthy way, because well, this is being recorded, but if you're in Wisconsin, we can't help your wellness by giving, like money to go out with your friends. So if it's truly mental health and wellness, like I said, yoga, meditation, gym memberships, counseling. When we say virtual subscriptions, there's some apps like Calm that have been helpful to people in the past, but everyone's different and different things are going to help different people. And the really neat thing is right now, or currently, depending on funding, family caregivers can apply for all three of these grants at the same time. So they can come to RCAW if they have that supporting documentation form, like I said. Good stewards of how we administer our grant funds, if they have a supporting documentation form and they want to apply for the Caregiver Respite Grant Program and have someone come in and spend some time with their loved one, that's fine. Or if they want to, if the care recipient would do well at a day camp, any way the family caregiver can get that break. And then they can also apply for the Supplemental Respite Grant Program and get help with any of the supplemental services. And they can use the Healthy Meals, Healthy Minds to help offset costs for anything on that allowable expense document. All right. Are there any questions?
Um, Excuse me, this is Mary Lou, and I just had a question regarding, you had said that you can apply for 2 or 3 of the grants. If you apply for the home meals, do I go to the person that I normally go to for my other grant that the SR, well, I can't remember, the supplemental one?
We all three of us, everybody is kind of involved in that. So you can go to questions with anybody. I would encourage you to use the info@ email if you have questions with any of the grants, just because it's most heavily monitored, so we can get you an answer quicker.
Okay.
But yeah, whomever you have a contact with, all of us are on the same page and we're happy to help.
Okay, thank you, Leslie.
Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you for joining us today, and we will be sure in a timely manner to get the recording to this webinar posted on our YouTube channel, and probably I'm sure we'll put it on social media as well as the link to the PowerPoint that we use, and we hope to be in contact with everyone here. Also, if you're a professional or if you're a family caregiver, and if you have any ideas, if there's groups that you think would benefit from hearing from myself or Leslie from RCAW, feel free to shoot us a line and connect us to them. And we're happy to present again.
This is Mary Lou. Thank you very much. It was very informative.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. You as well.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.